Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel, Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Today we're unpacking a headline that has set social media ablaze, triggered a fresh wave of think pieces, and put two of Turkey's most recognizable names under the sharpest spotlight, Hazal Kaya and Cagatay Ulusoy. If you enjoy measured, detailed coverage rather than empty noise, hit the like button, subscribe, and, if you want to support this kind of long-form reporting, tap the join button below. Thank you, and let's get into the video. Over the past 48 hours, one brief sound bite has become the fulcrum of an enormous conversation. In a clip circulating widely online, Cagatay Ulusoy is heard reflecting on love and limits. The line that detonated the discourse was stark and simple, a confession that he does not want a relationship outside of marriage, followed by the admission that he has nevertheless fallen in love, and that the person at the center of those feelings is married. It is the kind of sentence that compresses 100 contradictions into a single breath: principle and impulse, restraint and desire, privacy and publicity. Whether you heard it on a talk show, as an excerpt from a longer interview, or through a repost on a fan page, the effect was the same: shock, speculation, and a rush to fill the silence around it with stories. Let's slow down and separate the noise from the narrative. First, the context. Cagatay Ulusoy has built a career by embodying characters whose needs pull them into complex moral territory: ambitious young men, wounded protectors, protagonists who make the audience ask where the line really is. Off-screen, he has maintained a reputation for control and carefulness. That is why the admission hit so hard. It felt like the curtain drawn back on a private struggle, not a publicity hook. In a culture where celebrity statements are often sanded smooth by publicists, the rawness of his wording, no names, no theatrics, rang uncomfortably true. Within minutes, timelines split into two camps. One side framed the confession as proof of emotional transparency, an adult man naming a complicated feeling without asking the public for permission or absolution. The other side saw it as an error in judgment, an unnecessary disclosure that invites the crowd to weaponize curiosity. Both reactions are understandable. Love tangled with vows, your own or someone else's, is a volatile subject even when no one is famous, and this is a set of names followed by millions. Enter Hazal Kaya. Even though the line came from Cagatay, her name began trending alongside his before the hour was out. Some of that is the internet's habit of pairing familiar co-stars when any one of them moves. Some of it is the expectation that women will be asked to answer for men's sentences, even when they had nothing to do with them. What matters is how she navigated the moment. Industry watchers noticed that Hazal stayed on message, promoting work, thanking audiences, insisting on basics: respect, boundaries, no witch hunts. In a recent Q&A, professional, upbeat, and unmistakably firm, she reminded fans that privacy is not a scandal, it is a boundary. The subtext was clear without being accusatory: do not turn a vague confession into a targeted campaign against any woman. That last point bears repeating. The viral clip did not identify anyone. The temptation to solve the confession like a puzzle is strong, but it is also dangerous. A rumor with a name becomes a verdict in the comments section long before it meets any evidentiary standard. The ethics here are not abstract, they are practical. A real person with a real life is always on the other end of a theory, and internet certainty tends to crush nuance long before the truth has a chance to breathe. Meanwhile, the machine that surrounds celebrity stories kept moving. Brand managers scheduled emergency calls. Producers quietly assessed whether the discourse might overshadow upcoming releases. Publicists drafted two sets of talking points, one in case silence holds, another in case a longer statement becomes necessary. Fans, many of whom have grown up alongside these stars, offered a countercurrent of grace. You could see it in the comments that refused to reduce the confession to clickbait, choosing instead to talk about values: accountability without cruelty, compassion without complicity, admiration without entitlement. There is also a cultural layer that explains why this hit so hard. Turkey's audiences tend to read romantic declarations through a moral lens, not just a gossip lens. When a famous man says, "I fell in love with someone married," it is not just a confession, it is a test of his integrity, of her safety from harassment, and of our ability as an audience to keep both in view at the same time. This is where Hazal's posture matters. She did not act as a spokesperson for anyone else's heart, but she did model a way of moving through the chaos. Keep your eyes on the work, let compassion be specific instead of abstract, refuse to feed the hunger for names. What about Cagatay? If you strip away the hashtags and the theories, his words, however you judge them, contain two truths sitting side by side. The first is an ethical line he says he does not want to cross. The second is the admission that feelings do not always obey lines. Most people, if they're honest, recognize that tension. What distinguishes adulthood is what you do next, who you tell, what you ask of yourself, what you refuse to ask of another, and how you act so that no one pays for your honesty with their peace. That is where the public has a right to expect clarity, not about the identity of the woman, but about the conduct of the man who holds the microphone. Let's talk about the media's role for a moment. A clip like this is irresistible content. It can be framed as romance, scandal, confession, or courage, depending on what a platform believes will harvest the most attention. But audiences are wiser than they are often given credit for. Many of you wrote to us asking for a timeline, not a takedown. When was the interview recorded? Was it excerpted? Did he clarify the circumstances? Has anyone been harmed or harassed since it aired? Those are the right questions because they focus on action and consequence rather than on fantasy and projection. In that spirit, here is a responsible way forward that keeps both names in view without turning either into a caricature. Do not speculatively name the woman. That is not protecting privacy, that is placing a target. Hold public figures to their stated lines. If you say you will not pursue someone married, keep your own feet where your mouth is. Allow colleagues, Hazal included, to speak only for themselves. Do not conscript them as moral referees for other people's admissions. Reward measured statements with attention, not just the explosive ones. The market responds to what we reward. Professionally, both stars remain exactly what their colleagues say they are. Cagatay shows up prepared, chooses ambitious roles, and tends to avoid spectacle. Hazal continues to treat scripts like living things, probing their structure, testing whether the dialogue supports human truth rather than just fan service. If anything, this week underscored why they're still working at the top of the industry. They understand that the story you tell about your life can be as consequential as any story you tell on screen. So, what happens next? Perhaps nothing public. Perhaps a longer statement that reframes the line with care. Perhaps the conversation will shift back to the projects that deserve your attention. Whatever unfolds, the responsibility we all share is the same. Do not let curiosity outrun conscience. I'm curious what you think. Is a confession like this an act of vulnerability the public should meet with restraint, or a misstep that demands clearer boundaries from the person who made it? And how do you read Hazal Kaya's posture, an example of professional grace, or a reminder that women in the industry should not be drafted into someone else's narrative? If this video helped you see the story with more light and less heat, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. If you want to support reporting that privileges context over chaos, click the join button to become a member. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Take care, and goodbye.